Y'all, I need you to sit down for this one, because what I'm about to tell you is so outrageous, so dangerous, so absolutely un-American that even after everything we've seen from Donald Trump, this still manages to shock me. And child, that's saying something. So here's what's happening right now. Donald Trump, the twice impeached, 4 times indicted former president who's currently facing 91 criminal charges, is out here calling Democrats punishable by death. Let that sink in for a minute. He's literally using language that suggests his political opponents should be executed. Meanwhile, this same man is working overtime to protect actual criminals in his own party. I'm talking about protecting people credibly accused of sex trafficking minors. I'm talking about shielding people who violated campaign finance laws. I'm talking about covering up for folks who lied to federal investigators. Now, I spent years as a civil rights attorney and a public defender before I came to Congress, so I know a thing or two about the justice system. And let me tell you something, what we're witnessing right now ain't justice. This is a protection racket dressed up in red ties and American flag pins. This is about a man who thinks the law applies to everyone except him and his cronies. And the Republican Party, they're right there with him, co-signing this madness every single day. So let's break down exactly what's happening here, because the American people deserve to know the truth, okay? So let me give y'all the full picture of what we're dealing with, because this ain't just about one wild statement Trump made on Truth Social or at a rally. This is about a pattern that's been building since before he even left office the first time, and it's gotten worse since he came back. First, let's talk about this punishable by death language. Trump has repeatedly posted and said that people who oppose him, Democrats, prosecutors, judges, even former military officials, have committed treason and should face the death penalty. In October 2023, he reposted messages saying that General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, committed treason and suggested he deserved execution. He's called prosecutors who are investigating him enemies of the state. He said that people who cheated in the 2020 election, which is his way of describing anyone who certified Biden's win, should be prosecuted at levels never seen before in our country. Now, I know some of y'all might be thinking, well, that's just Trump being Trump. He talks big. But here's the deal. Words matter, especially when they come from someone who's been president and might be president again. When you have millions of followers who believe every word you say, and you tell them that your political opponents deserve to die, you're not just talking, you're inciting, you're creating a permission structure for violence. And we've already seen what happens when Trump uses this kind of language. We saw it on January 6, 2021, when his supporters attacked the Capitol, threatened to hang Mike Pence, and went hunting for members of Congress, including me. 5 people died that day. More than 140 police officers were injured. And Trump, he sat in the White House dining room watching it on TV for hours, doing nothing to stop it. But here's where the hypocrisy gets absolutely mind-blowing. While Trump is out here calling for the death penalty for his political enemies, he's simultaneously working to protect actual lawbreakers in his own administration and party. He pardoned Steve Bannon, who was indicted for fraud. He pardoned Roger Stone, who was convicted of lying to Congress. He's defending Matt Gaetz, who was under federal investigation for sex trafficking. He's protecting everyone around him who's facing legal consequences for real crimes, crimes with actual victims, while calling for Democrats who've done nothing wrong to be executed. This ain't about law and order. This ain't about justice. This is about power and who gets to wield it without consequences. And right now, we're watching Donald Trump try to turn the American justice system into his personal weapon of revenge, while simultaneously making himself and his allies immune from accountability. So let's talk about this hypocrisy head on, because it's so blatant that you think it was satire if it wasn't actually happening. Donald Trump and the Republican Party have spent years wrapping themselves in the flag, calling themselves the law and order party, talking about how they're tough on crime and how Democrats are soft on criminals, right? Y'all remember all that? Back the blue, thin blue line. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. But now we're seeing what they really meant. They meant law and order for you, for us, for regular people, for black folks and brown folks and poor folks, but not for them. Never for them. Let me give you some specific examples, because I got the receipts. Matt Gaetz, a sitting Republican congressman from Florida, was investigated by the Department of Justice for allegedly sex trafficking a minor. The DOJ had witnesses, financial records, text messages. This was a serious federal investigation into whether a member of Congress paid to have sex with a 17-year-old girl and transported her across state lines. And you know what happened? Trump defended him. The Republican Party stood by him. They fought to keep the House Ethics Committee report buried. And when Trump came back into power, one of the first things he did was make sure his Justice Department dropped any lingering interest in that case. Now let me ask y'all something. If a Democratic congressman was credibly accused of sex trafficking a minor, how long do you think it would take before Republicans were calling for their head? How many investigations would they launch? How many subpoenas would they issue? They impeached a president over a phone call, but they'll protect a congressman accused of trafficking children. Make it make sense. And it ain't just Gates. Look at who Trump pardoned during his first term. Steve Bannon indicted for defrauding donors to a Build a Wall fundraising campaign. He and his partners allegedly stole money from people who thought they were funding border security. That's theft. That's fraud. But Trump pardoned him before he could even go to trial. Roger Stone convicted by a jury of lying to Congress, witness tampering, and obstructing a federal investigation. Trump commuted his sentence. Paul Manafort convicted of tax fraud and bank fraud, pardoned. Charles Kushner convicted of illegal campaign contributions, tax evasion, and witness tampering, pardoned. And Trump just made Charles Kushner the ambassador to France. Let me say that again for the folks in the back. Trump made a convicted felon who went to prison for witness tampering our ambassador to France, but he wants Democrats executed for treason because we certified an election. And here's what really gets me. While Trump is protecting all these criminals, and I'm talking about people convicted by juries, not just accused, he's calling for the prosecution and execution of people who haven't committed any crimes at all. He wants prosecutors who are investigating him arrested. He wants military generals who follow the Constitution instead of his orders executed for treason. He wants election workers who did their jobs prosecuted. He suggested that Liz Cheney should face a firing squad for serving on the January 6th committee. You see what's happening here? Trump has created a system where loyalty to him is the only thing that matters. Break the law for him, you get a pardon. Lie for him, you get a pardon. Defraud people, traffic, children, obstruct justice, doesn't matter. As long as you're loyal to Donald Trump, you're protected. But if you hold him accountable, if you investigate him, if you tell the truth about him, then you're an enemy. Then you deserve to die. This is not hyperbole. This is not exaggeration. This is what Donald Trump has said repeatedly in public, on social media, at rallies. And the Republican Party ain't doing a damn thing to stop it. In fact, they're enabling it. They're cheering it on. They're helping him dismantle the justice system so that it protects criminals and punishes truth tellers. Child, this ain't law and order. This is lawlessness justified by power. Now here's where it gets even worse, because this ain't just about pardons and rhetoric. This is about Donald Trump systematically dismantling the institutions that are supposed to hold powerful people accountable and replacing them with loyalists who will do his bidding. Let me walk y'all through what's been happening since Trump took office this time. First thing he did, he fired every single inspector general he could get his hands on. Now, for folks who don't know, inspectors general are the independent watchdogs inside federal agencies. Their job is to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse to make sure government officials aren't breaking the law or misusing taxpayer money. They're supposed to be independent, protected from political retaliation. But Trump don't care about that. He fired them all and replaced them with people loyal to him. Why does that matter? Because without independent oversight, there's nobody watching what his administration does. There's nobody investigating corruption. There's nobody protecting whistleblowers who try to expose wrongdoing. It's like firing all the referees before the game starts and then claiming you won fair and square. Then look at what he's done at the Department of Justice. Trump has been clear from day one that he sees the DOJ as his personal law firm. He's demanded that they prosecute his enemies and protect his friends. And we're seeing that happen in real time. The investigation into Matt Gaetz, shut down. The investigation into Trump's handling of classified documents, he's trying to make it disappear. Meanwhile, he's calling for investigations into Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Liz Cheney, the list goes on and on. He literally keeps an enemies list and expects the Justice Department to go after everyone on it. Now, as someone who worked in the legal system, let me tell you why this is so dangerous. The criminal justice system only works if it's applied equally. If rich and powerful people can break the law without consequences while regular folks go to prison for minor offenses, then we don't have a justice system, we have a class system, we have an aristocracy. And that's exactly what Trump is trying to create, a system where he and his allies are above the law while everyone else is subject to it. And let's talk about who gets hurt by this. Because it ain't just abstract principles we're talking about, there are real victims. When Matt Gaetz gets protected, the young woman he allegedly trafficked doesn't get justice. When Trump pardons people convicted of fraud, the people they defrauded don't get their money back. When he fires inspectors general, the government employees who try to blow the whistle on corruption lose their jobs and their livelihoods. When he calls for the execution of election workers, those workers and their families live in fear. I've heard from election workers in my district who are terrified. These are people who've worked elections for decades, Republicans and Democrats, just regular folks trying to do their civic duty. And now they're getting death threats, they're being doxxed, they're being harassed at their homes. Why? Because Donald Trump told his supporters that they're criminals who stole an election. It's a lie, but the damage is real. And here's what really keeps me up at night. This is exactly how democracies die. I'm not being dramatic, I'm stating a historical fact. When you have a leader who places himself above the law, who uses the justice system to punish opponents and protect allies, who encourages violence against anyone who opposes him, that's authoritarianism. That's how you get from democracy to dictatorship. We've seen it in other countries. It starts with attacks on the press, fake news, enemy of the people, then attacks on the judiciary, so-called judges, rigged courts, then attacks on elections, stolen, fraudulent, then attacks on political opponents, traitors, deserve execution. And before you know it, you don't have free and fair elections anymore. You don't have an independent judiciary. You don't have a free press. You have one person with unchecked power, surrounded by loyalists, accountable to no one. And y'all, we are dangerously close to that right now. I'm not saying we're there yet, but the warning signs are flashing red. When a president can commit crimes and face no consequences, when he can order his subordinates to commit crimes and pardon them, when he can call for the execution of his opponents and face no backlash from his own party, that's not normal. That's not American. That's a threat to everything this country is supposed to stand for. So yeah, this is about more than hypocrisy. This is about whether we're going to have a country where the law means something or whether we're going to have a country where might makes right and the powerful can do whatever they want. Now let's talk about exactly who's involved in this, because accountability requires naming names. I'm not going to let people hide behind vague language or party loyalty. If you're participating in this corruption, if you're enabling this lawlessness, the American people deserve to know who you are. Let's start at the top. Donald Trump is the architect of all of this. He's the one calling for executions. He's the one handing out pardons like candy. He's the one demanding that the Justice Department prosecute his enemies. This all flows from him. And every single day that he's allowed to do this without consequences, a day that this cancer spreads further into our government. But Trump ain't doing this alone. He's got a whole team of enablers and accomplices, and they all need to be held accountable. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, he's supposed to be a co-equal branch of government. He's supposed to provide oversight and accountability, but what's he doing? Nothing. Worse than nothing, he's actively helping Trump. He's blocking investigations. He's refusing to release ethics reports on Republican members. He's turning the House of Representatives into a protection racket for Trump and his allies. Pam Bondi, Trump's Attorney General. This is the person who's supposed to enforce the law impartially, but she's already made it clear that she sees her job as protecting Trump and going after his enemies. Before she was confirmed, she talked about prosecuting prosecutors. She talked about investigating the investigators. She's turning the Department of Justice into Trump's personal revenge machine. Matt Gaetz already talked about him, but let me say it again. This man was investigated for sex trafficking a minor, and the Republican Party protected him. They buried the ethics report. They defended him publicly. They made excuses for him, and now he's walking around free while Trump calls Democrats traitors. Where's the accountability? Jim Jordan, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, his job is supposed to be oversight. Instead, he uses his position to attack anyone investigating Trump while ignoring actual corruption within the Republican Party. He's weaponized the committee to go after whistleblowers, prosecutors, and anyone who dares tell the truth about Trump. And then there's all the Republicans in Congress who know better but stay silent. I'm talking about senators and representatives who privately admit that Trump is dangerous, that what he's doing is wrong, but who won't say a word publicly because they're afraid of losing their next primary. They're cowards, and their cowardice is allowing this to happen. Let's also talk about who's being targeted, because while Trump and his allies are protecting criminals, they're going after public servants who've done nothing wrong. Jack Smith, the special counsel who investigated Trump's handling of classified documents and his role in January 6, Trump has called for him to be prosecuted and deported. Fani Willis, the Fulton County District Attorney who investigated Trump's attempt to overturn Georgia's election results, Trump and his allies have attacked her relentlessly, tried to disqualify her from the case, and threatened her with prosecution. General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who followed the Constitution and his oath instead of blindly following Trump's orders, Trump suggested he should be executed for treason. Liz Cheney, former Republican Congresswoman who served on the January 6 committee and told the truth about Trump's actions. Trump has called for her prosecution and suggested she should face a firing squad. These are patriots. These are people who put country over party, who followed the law, who told the truth. And they're being treated like criminals while actual criminals are being protected. That's where we are right now. So let me break down what this really means for regular Americans, because I know some folks might be thinking, this is just politics, this is just Washington drama. This doesn't affect me. But child, let me tell you, this affects every single one of us. First and most obviously, this means that if Trump and his allies succeed in creating a system where they're above the law, then the law doesn't protect you anymore either. Because if powerful people can break the law without consequences, then the law is just a tool they use against people who don't have power. And that means you. That means your family. That means your community. Think about it like this. If Matt Gaetz can allegedly traffic a minor and face no consequences because he's politically connected, but a young black man in my district can get 20 years for a nonviolent drug offense, then we don't have equal justice under law. We have justice for the privilege and punishment for everyone else. This also means that your vote matters less. Because if Trump and his allies can overturn election results they don't like, if they can prosecute election workers who certify votes they don't agree with, then your vote doesn't count. They'll just throw it out if it goes against them, and then we don't have democracy anymore. We have elections in name only, like Russia, like Belarus, like every other authoritarian country where people go through the motions of voting, but the outcome is predetermined. And listen, this affects your day-to-day life in practical ways too. When Trump fires inspectors general, when he fills government agencies with loyalists instead of qualified professionals, when he uses federal resources to reward friends and punish enemies, that means your government doesn't work for you anymore. It means disaster response is based on whether your state voted for Trump. It means federal contracts go to Trump's donors instead of the most qualified bidders. It means your tax dollars are wasted on corruption and grift instead of being used for schools, infrastructure, healthcare, and all the things we actually need. For folks in my district, this is personal. We've got veterans who depend on the VA. We've got families who depend on Social Security and Medicare. We've got small businesses that need SBA loans. And all of that is at risk when you have a president who sees government as his personal piggy bank and who fires anyone who tries to stop corruption. This is about whether we're going to have a government of, by, and for the people, or whether we're going to have a government of, by, and for Donald Trump and whoever's loyal to him. That's what's at stake. That's why this matters. That's why we can't just shrug our shoulders and act like this is normal politics. Now, let me tell you what should be happening, because I don't want y'all to think this is inevitable or that there's nothing we can do about it. First and foremost, we need accountability, real accountability. That means if you commit a crime, you face consequences regardless of your political party, regardless of who you're friends with, regardless of how much money you have. If Matt Gaetz trafficked a minor, he should be prosecuted. If Trump obstructed justice, he should face trial. If anyone in government commits fraud, witness tampering, or any other crime, they should be held accountable under the law, no exceptions. Second, we need to restore independence to our justice system. The Attorney General should not be the president's personal lawyer. The Justice Department should investigate crimes based on evidence, not based on political loyalty. Inspectors General should be protected and allowed to do their jobs without fear of being fired. FBI directors should serve their full 10-year terms regardless of which party controls the White House. These are basic principles of rule of law, and we need to fight to restore them. Third, Congress needs to do its job. We need real oversight. We need investigations into corruption and abuse of power. We need to use our subpoena power to get documents and testimony. We need to hold public hearings so the American people can see what's really happening. And when we find wrongdoing, we need to take action, whether that's impeachment, censure, criminal referrals, or whatever tools we have available. Fourth, we need to protect the people who are being targeted for telling the truth. Whistleblowers need legal protection. Election workers need security. Prosecutors and judges need to be able to do their jobs without facing death threats. We need to make it clear that in America, you don't get punished for following the law and telling the truth. And finally, we need transparency. The House Ethics Committee report on Matt Gaetz should be released. Trump's tax returns and financial records should be public. Any investigations into alleged wrongdoing by public officials should be conducted in the open, with the American people able to see the evidence for themselves. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and we need a whole lot of sunlight on what's happening right now. So here's what y'all need to do, because we're not powerless in this. We've got tools, and we need to use them. First, pay attention. I know it's exhausting. I know it feels overwhelming, but we can't afford to tune out right now. Follow the news. Know what's happening. Know who's doing what, because they're counting on you getting tired and giving up. Second, make your voice heard. Call your representatives, Democrats and Republicans. Tell them that equal justice matters to you. Tell them that no one should be above the law. Tell them that if they enable this corruption, you'll remember at the ballot box. Third, support the people who are fighting back. Support prosecutors who are doing their jobs. Support election workers who are protecting our democracy. Support journalists who are exposing corruption. These people are under attack, and they need to know we have their backs. And finally, don't lose hope. I know this is scary. I know it feels like we're losing ground, but we've been through hard times before, and we've come out the other side. As long as we keep fighting, as long as we keep speaking truth, as long as we refuse to accept this as normal, we've got a chance. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep calling this out, keep fighting for accountability, keep demanding better, and I hope y'all will be right there with me.